Hello everybody, getting ready to do a lesson 9.2 part 2 pre-algebra math today, and for today's lesson 9.2 part 2 you got 10 points on your notebook sheet, and then 12 points here on your classwork sheet. Student, put your name, date, period, due date here on liners and homeschoolers. Let's go right into 9.2 part 2 notebook entry here. Quotients. Notice that radical 100 over 4 would equal radical 25, which would equal 5. And radical 100 over radical 4 would equal 10 over 2, which would equal 5. This result suggests that the quotient property of square roots, which you can also use to simplify radical expressions. Quotient property of square roots. So the algebra for that would be the radical a over b would be the same thing as radical a over radical b, where a is greater than or equal to 0, b is greater than 0. And then the numbers, we plug in numbers here. Radical 11 over 4 would be radical 11 over radical 4, which would be radical 11 over 2. So there is your quotient property of square roots. So let's try one of these now in an actual example. Example 3, simplifying a radical expression. So we have radical 13 over 36. So for this one here, we're going to use our quotient property of square roots, which would be radical 13 over radical 36, and then when we have that, we end up with radical 13 over 6. So that would be your simplification of this expression. So let's try one. Simplify this expression here. Students, this is yours down here. So for up here, we have radical 15 over 16. So how do we go about solving that? So radical 15 over radical 16 would be radical 15 over radical 16. This should actually have a radical 16 here. It does not have it, but it'd be radical 15 over radical 16, which would be square root of 15 over square root of 16, and then square root of 16 is 4, and then radical square root of 15 would be some other number. So that would be a simplified expression there without a calculator. So that would be a simplification of that there. Let's try another one. So using radical expressions. So accident investigation. After a car accident like this, a police officer measures the length L in feet of a car's skid marks. The expression radical 27L gives the car's speed in miles per hour at the time the brakes were applied. So write the expression in simplest form. Okay. So radical 27L will be the same thing as radical 9 times 3 times L. Factoring using greatest perfect square factor, which would be 9, would be your greatest perfect square. Out of that, so radical 9 times radical 3L, product property of square roots. And then this will become 3 times radical 3L. That'll be a simplification of this expression up here. So the answer in simplest form of radical 27L would be 3 times radical 3L. Okay, so B, the skid marks are 125 feet long. Use the simplified expression to approximate the car's speed when the brakes were applied. So now that we know that the skid marks are 125 feet long, we can plug in now for L 125. 3 times radical 3 times 125, substitute 125 for L, that's the skid marks. So once we have that, we have 3 times radical 375. Multiply that out. And then this, actually, if you multiply on your calculator 3 times the square root of 375, you get approximately 58. So the car's speed was about 58 miles per hour when it hit the brakes. Okay, let's try one here. Your maximum walking speed in inches per second can be approximated using the expression radical 384L, where L is your leg length in inches. Suppose your leg length is 28 inches. Write an expression in simplest form for your maximum walking speed. Then approximate the speed to the nearest inch per second. Okay, so that is our guided. Students, this is yours down here. Let's get on this guided practice up here so you can get on your independent practice down here. So 384L, and we know the lengths in this situation here is 28 inches. So that comes out to 10,752, and then we break it down to the largest perfect square, which would be 256 times 42, and then radical 256 times radical 42 would be 16 times radical 42, so it'd be 104 would be the maximum walking speed in inches per second, so 104 inches per second will be your maximum walking speed if you have a leg length of 28 inches. In simplest form, it would be 16 times 42, so the maximum walking speed would be 104 inches per second. Okay, so that is your lesson today for pre-algebra math. Email me at animatedpowerpointmathvideo@aol.com for questions or course materials. Thank you very much.